My wife found her own signature in our son's new house 6 years after she retired. It was printed at the bottom of a nursing report for a woman Miriam had never met. The report claimed my wife had examined the woman at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, evaluated a wound, changed a treatment plan, and approved another week of home visits. At 9 o'clock that Tuesday, Miriam had been sitting beside me in a cardiologist's waiting room 40 miles away. But I did not know any of that when she first came down the curved staircase at Andrew's housewarming party. All I knew was that her face had lost its color. The party was being held in a glass and stone house on the edge of Columbus, Ohio. It stood on 2 wooded acres behind a gate, with a camera hidden in a brick pillar. There were 6 bedrooms, a heated pool, a kitchen with 2 islands, and a wine room larger than the first apartment Miriam and I had rented after our wedding. My son had paid $1,400,000 for it. At least, that was what he had told me. More than 80 people moved through the rooms carrying champagne and small plates. Some were employees from Andrew's company, Havenbridge Senior Services. Others were bankers, county officials, hospital administrators, and people whose shoes cost more than my first truck. A jazz trio played beside the fireplace. Photographs of Andrew and his wife, Camille, had already been arranged on shelves as if the house had belonged to them for generations. I was standing near the back terrace while Andrew explained his outdoor kitchen to a county commissioner. My son was 44 years old, broad-shouldered, silver beginning at his temples, and very good at making people feel that whatever he said next had been prepared especially for them. He had built Havenbridge around a simple promise: helping older people remain safely in their own homes. It was a promise Miriam and I had believed in enough to give him $85,000 when he started the company. Miriam touched my elbow. "Harold," she said. Her voice was quiet, but after 48 years of marriage, I knew every kind of quiet she had. There was the quiet she used in church, the quiet she used when one of our children was sleeping, the quiet she used as a nurse when a frightened family needed to believe the room was under control. This was none of those. "We have to go," she whispered. I turned toward her. "Are you sick?" "No." "What happened?" Her fingers tightened around my sleeve. "Smile first." That frightened me more than if she had screamed, so I smiled. Across the room, Camille was watching us. She wore a cream-colored dress and the diamond earrings Andrew had given her on their 10th anniversary. She raised her glass. I raised mine in return. "Now walk with me," Miriam said. "Not toward the front door. Go through the kitchen." We moved past the islands, thanked a waiter, and stepped into a mudroom filled with coats. Miriam opened the door to the garage. 3 vehicles waited beneath bright white lights: Andrew's black SUV, Camille's sports car, and a vintage convertible that had once belonged to her father. Our 14-year-old Ford pickup was parked at the bottom of the circular drive. The September air felt cool after the crowded house. We walked without hurrying. Halfway down the drive, Andrew called behind us. "Dad?" I turned. He stood beneath the portico with one hand in his pocket. "Where are you going?" Miriam answered before I could. "My stomach is unsettled." Andrew took one step forward. "We have rooms upstairs. You can lie down." "Home is better," she said. His eyes moved from her to me. It was a quick movement, but I saw calculation in it. "You didn't get to see the lower level," he said. "We finished a guest suite you two would love." "Next time," I replied. Camille appeared behind him. "At least let Daniel drive you. You've both had champagne." Neither of us had finished half a glass. "I'm fine," I said. For a second, no one spoke. Then Andrew put on the warm expression he used in photographs. "Call when you get home." I opened the passenger door for Miriam and walked around the truck. We did not speak until the gate closed behind us. "Pull over," she said. There was a small Methodist church a mile down the road. I turned into its empty parking lot and stopped beneath an oak tree. Miriam sat with both hands in her lap, looking through the windshield. "Upstairs, I asked one of the caterers where the restroom was," she began. She pointed me toward the east hall. I opened the wrong door. What was inside? An office. Not Andrew's regular office. There were metal cabinets, a document scanner, medication labels, and patient schedules. I waited. "One cabinet was open," she said. I saw a familiar name on a folder. Mrs. Ida Bell. I cared for her after her hip surgery 8 years ago. She died last winter. Maybe Havenbridge treated her later. They billed a supervisory visit to her 3 weeks ago. The church parking lot seemed suddenly too still. Miriam reached into her purse and removed her phone. She opened a photograph. It showed a white page on a dark desk. At the top were the words, Clinical Supervisory Review. At the bottom, above a typed license number, was my wife's name, Miriam Bennett, RN. The signature was hers, not similar to hers. Hers. My license is still active because of the free clinic, she said. That report says I examined a patient last month. Here is another from June. And another from April. She moved through the photographs. Different names, different addresses, the same signature. How many did you see? Enough. I felt the old instinct to protect my family rise inside me. It had protected Andrew when he broke a neighbor's window at 11. It had helped him through a failed first business, a divorce, and a season when he could not pay his taxes. That instinct immediately began offering explanations. A clerical error, an old template, a confused employee. Then Miriam showed me the last photograph. It was not a nursing report. It was an invoice for a wheelchair ramp and bathroom conversion at an address on Willow Lane. The invoice stated that the work had been inspected and certified by Bennett Residential Improvements. That had been my company. I had closed it 9 years earlier. My old state registration number appeared beneath a digital copy of my seal. That ramp cost $19,000, Miriam said. Did you build it? No. Did you inspect it? No. She looked at me then. Her eyes were wet, but her voice remained steady. Harold, according to those records, I have been treating people for 2 years. And according to the invoices, you have been building their houses. I looked back toward the road leading to our son's mansion. For years, Andrew had told us Havenbridge was growing faster than anyone expected. He said hospitals trusted him. He said county programs loved him. He said his success proved that a business could do good and still do well. The house behind that gate had been built as evidence of the dream. Now I wondered whose names were hidden inside its walls. We need to ask him, I said. Miriam shook her head. Not yet. He is our son. That is why not yet. She took my hand. If this is innocent, waiting one day will not hurt him. If it is not innocent, warning him could hurt every patient whose file is in that room. I had spent most of my life measuring twice before I cut once. It was a rule I had taught hundreds of apprentices and ignored whenever my own child was involved. That night, for the first time, I decided to measure my son by what he had done instead of what I hoped he meant. Andrew had not grown up planning to work with older people. As a boy, he wanted to design airplanes. In high school, he wanted to become a sports agent. During college, he changed majors 3 times and graduated with a degree in business communications that Miriam described as expensive proof he could talk. He could talk. Even at 22, Andrew could enter a room filled with strangers and leave knowing everyone's name. People mistook that ease for shallowness, but when he was young, there was kindness beneath it. He carried groceries for our elderly neighbor without being asked. He spent one winter shoveling the walk of a teacher who had lost her husband. When Miriam's mother developed Parkinson's disease, Andrew drove her to appointments and never complained about the time. The idea for Havenbridge came after my sister, Ruth Ann, fell in her bathroom. She was 79 and lived alone in a small ranch house outside Newark. The hospital wanted to discharge her, but the bathroom doorway was too narrow for a walker, the front steps had no rail, and no home care agency could send a nurse for 6 days. Andrew was sitting with us in the hospital cafeteria when he said the system made no sense. The nurse doesn't talk to the contractor, he said. The contractor doesn't talk to the family. The family calls 10 numbers and gets 10 excuses. Why isn't there one company that handles all of it? Miriam looked at him with interest. Clinical care and home modifications under one plan? And transportation. Meals, equipment, whatever keeps someone from being forced into a facility because one doorway is too small. For 6 months, he researched licenses, billing systems, vendors, and insurance. He asked smart questions. He listened to Miriam explain care plans and staffing ratios. He followed me through old jobs while I explained grab bar placement, ramp slope, non-slip flooring, and the difference between making a house accessible and making it look institutional. When the bank declined his first loan, he came to our kitchen with a 27-page business plan. I am not asking for a gift, he said. I am asking you to invest in something you already believe in. The $85,000 came from savings I had built by repairing kitchens on weekends and teaching carpentry during the week. It was not our retirement fund, but it was not loose change either. Miriam and I discussed it for 3 nights. He has found work that matters, she said. I agreed. We wrote a proper loan agreement. Andrew insisted. 5% interest. Payments beginning after 18 months. No ownership for us and no right to interfere in daily operations. He wanted to prove he was building his own company. The first 2 years were difficult. Havenbridge operated from 3 rooms above a pharmacy. Andrew drove patients himself when the transportation coordinator quit. Camille handled billing at the kitchen table after putting their daughter, Sophie, to bed. Miriam volunteered 10 hours a week during the company's first 3 months, helping create nursing policies and interview its first clinical supervisor. I loaned tools and taught 2 young workers how to install rails without splitting old plaster. Then Miriam stepped away. At the time, she told me the company had hired qualified staff and no longer needed free help. I believed her. Years later, I would learn that was only half the reason. Havenbridge began winning contracts. A regional hospital hired it to reduce readmissions. 2 insurance plans added it to their networks. County agencies referred older residents who qualified for home modification grants. Andrew paid our loan on schedule and returned every tool with new blades. His success felt earned. At Sunday dinners, he talked about clients who could bathe safely, veterans who returned home from rehabilitation, and widows who no longer had to choose between food and transportation. Miriam always asked detailed questions. How many registered nurses supervised the aides? Who verified visits? What happened when a patient declined care? Andrew answered at first. Later, Camille began answering for him. She had studied finance and spent 10 years in hospital administration. She was intelligent, composed, and impatient with questions she considered emotional. If Miriam asked about staffing, Camille displayed retention percentages. If I asked about a construction invoice, she explained vendor utilization. She could make a concern sound outdated by attaching it to a chart. You 2 built small businesses, she told us once. Healthcare at scale is different. I remember feeling insulted, then embarrassed for feeling insulted. Andrew changed in smaller ways. He stopped saying patients and began saying covered lives. He stopped visiting the office above the pharmacy and moved Havenbridge into a mirrored building beside the interstate. He hired a communications director. His Christmas cards began listing corporate awards beneath the family photograph. None of that proved dishonesty. A successful company does not have to remain poor to remain good. I reminded myself of that whenever Andrew arrived in a new car or canceled dinner for a conference. The house was different. He had invited us to see the land before construction began. Standing among the trees, he described a home where the entire family could gather. He pointed to a lower terrace. There will be a full suite down there, he said. No steps, wide doors, private entrance. If you and Mom ever need us, you will never have to go anywhere else. Miriam smiled politely. On the drive home, she said, he designed our old age without asking where we want to spend it. It was meant kindly. Perhaps. Andrew never asked us for money for the house. That had reassured me. He said Havenbridge had distributed profits after an exceptional year, and the bank considered the business strong enough to support the mortgage. At the housewarming, he gave a speech beside the fireplace. He thanked Camille for believing in him, Sophie for sharing her father with a demanding mission, and his employees for changing the way America ages. Then he thanked us. My parents taught me that dignity is not a luxury, he said. Everything Havenbridge has become started at their kitchen table. The guests applauded. Miriam squeezed my hand. I thought she was moved. Later, she told me she had felt trapped. If she challenged him after that speech, she would look like an ungrateful mother attacking the son who honored her. If she stayed silent, her name would continue giving credibility to a company she no longer understood. That was before she opened the wrong door. At home, after the party, we placed her photographs on our kitchen table and opened the old Havenbridge files we had kept. The first clinical policies carried Miriam's name as a temporary advisor. The authorization was limited to 90 days and had expired more than 8 years earlier. My construction registration had been used only for 3 original demonstration projects. Each form stated that no future use was permitted without written approval. Miriam read the pages twice. "When I stopped volunteering," she said, "it was because Camille asked me to approve a patient visit I had not supervised." I stared at her. "You never told me that." "I made them remove it." Andrew apologized. He said a new employee had copied the wrong signature block. "And you believed him?" "I wanted to." The words were not an accusation. They were a confession we shared. I sat across from her, surrounded by proof that our names had entered our son's company through a door we had opened ourselves. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you had just had the procedure on your heart. Because you were proud of him. Because he fixed it when I demanded it." She looked down. "And because I did not want one bad form to become the reason you lost your son." Outside, wind moved through the maple tree beside our porch. The branches rubbed softly against the roof. "What do we do now?" I asked. Miriam closed the file. "We find out whether it was one bad form." The address on the ramp invoice belonged to a woman named Elsie Monroe. I recognized the street before I recognized her name. Willow Lane was a row of modest houses built after the Korean War, all shallow roofs, small porches, and maple trees that had grown large enough to lift sections of sidewalk. I had installed rails in 2 of those houses through a church volunteer program. Miriam and I did not drive there immediately. We spent Sunday morning deciding what we could learn without frightening a patient or contaminating evidence. Neither of us was a lawyer. Neither of us wanted to turn suspicion into accusation simply because our names appeared where they did not belong. At noon, I called Denise Park. Denise had been our attorney for 23 years. She had handled the sale of my company, drafted our wills, and once stopped a contractor from placing a lien on my widowed sister's house. She was 68, small, direct, and unimpressed by family titles when documents said something else. She listened without interrupting. "Do not call Andrew," she said when I finished. That was Miriam's advice. Miriam is right. My wife lifted an eyebrow as if this outcome had never been in doubt. Denise asked us to send copies of our original agreements, not the photographs from the patient files. Those, she said, might contain protected medical information. Miriam should keep the images secure, show them only to counsel or investigators, and not forward them through ordinary email. "Can we contact the woman on Willow Lane?" I asked. "Only if you know her independently. Do not pretend to be investigating. If she chooses to show you her own bills or records, that is different." I did know Elsie, though not well. 5 years earlier, our church had received a request to repair her porch rail after she broke a wrist. I had led the work crew. She made us lemonade and corrected my grammar while we measured posts. A retired school librarian, she believed precision was a form of respect. When I telephoned, she remembered me. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "the man who thinks a semicolon is decorative. I have improved. At your age, improvement is a lovely rumor." Her humor eased something in me. I told her I was reviewing old volunteer projects and asked whether the porch rail remained secure. That was true, though incomplete. She invited us for coffee the next afternoon. Elsie was 84. She answered the door using a walker and wore a purple sweater despite the warm day. The original rail I had installed was solid. A short wooden ramp extended from the porch to the driveway. It was newer than the rail, but simple. Treated lumber, basic handrails, no concrete foundation. "Havenbridge built that?" I asked. "Their subcontractor did." 3 boys who spent most of the morning arguing about a level. Inside, Miriam admired the shelves covering Elsie's living room. We talked about books, church, and the changes on Willow Lane. I did not mention the invoice until Elsie complained that an insurance company kept sending statements for services she did not understand. "Would you like Miriam to look at them?" I asked. She used to supervise home care. Elsie disappeared into the bedroom and returned with a grocery bag filled with envelopes. The explanation of benefits forms showed Havenbridge billing for nursing visits, personal care assistance, transportation, and a major accessibility modification package. Elsie had received some services. An aide came 3 mornings a week. A driver took her to physical therapy. Someone had installed the ramp. But the dates and amounts did not match her memory. "This says a nurse saw you on August 14th, Miriam said. "I was in Michigan with my niece that week." "August 18th? Still in Michigan. September 2nd? Elsie looked toward the calendar beside her telephone. That was Labor Day. No one came. I found the construction line. The program had been billed $18,900 for a modular aluminum ramp, reinforced landing, widened exterior door, bathroom grab bar system, and electrical safety upgrade. The wooden ramp outside could not have cost more than $2,000, even with labor. Her door had not been widened. The bathroom had one grab bar, a retail model fixed into drywall with anchors I would never have approved. At the bottom of the itemized statement appeared my old registration number. "Did I inspect this work?" I asked. Elsie laughed. "You are here now. Before today." Her smile faded. "No." Miriam asked whether Elsie had signed completion forms. She remembered a tablet. A young man from Havenbridge told her the signature confirmed the ramp had arrived. She could not read the full document because the screen kept moving. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. That question changed the room. An 84-year-old woman had been overbilled, poorly served, and left with a dangerous grab bar. Yet her first fear was that someone would punish her. "No," Miriam said. She moved beside Elsie and placed a hand over hers. "You are not in trouble." I went to the bathroom and tested the bar. It shifted under half my weight. "Do not use this," I called. Elsie appeared in the doorway. "It is the only thing I have to hold when I step into the tub." I removed my belt, wrapped it through the bar, and pulled. One anchor tore out of the wall. Miriam inhaled sharply. I thought of Havenbridge's advertisements. Safety, dignity, independence. Then I thought of my seal beneath an invoice claiming I had approved this. I took photographs with Elsie's permission. I measured the ramp, the doorway, and the bar placement. Denise later arranged for Elsie to sign a statement and request her complete records directly from Havenbridge. We paid a licensed contractor, chosen by Elsie, to replace the bar that week. I did not touch it myself. I wanted an independent inspection. Before we left, Elsie walked us to the porch. "Your son owns that company, doesn't he?" she asked. I could have lied. The truth felt heavy but necessary. "Yes." She studied my face for a moment. "That must make this harder." "It does. It should not make the truth smaller." On the drive home, neither Miriam nor I spoke for several miles. At a red light, she said, "She was worried we would blame her." "I know. How many others are worried?" I did not answer because I had begun asking a different question. How many houses carried my name beneath work I would never have accepted? Denise arranged our first formal meeting for Tuesday morning. Her conference room overlooked the county courthouse. On the wall hung a framed photograph of her father standing outside the grocery store he had opened after arriving from Korea with one suitcase. Denise believed every legal problem eventually became a question about what people thought they owned: money, land, truth, or another person's silence. She brought in a healthcare compliance attorney named Rebecca Sloan. Rebecca did not speak dramatically. She reviewed each page, asked where it came from, and separated what we knew from what we suspected. We knew Miriam's name and active nursing license number appeared on current clinical records. We knew my expired contractor registration and digital seal appeared on a current accessibility invoice. We knew at least one patient had been billed for visits that did not occur and construction that was not completed as described. We suspected a larger pattern. "Do not access Havenbridge systems," Rebecca said. "Do not ask an employee to get files. Do not record private conversations unless counsel confirms the law. Preserve what you already have and let the patients request their own records." "Should Miriam notify the nursing board?" I asked. "Soon, and through counsel. Her license may be at risk even though she is a victim." Miriam's shoulders lowered slightly. She had understood that before anyone said it aloud. "I should have reported the first false form 8 years ago," she said. Rebecca looked at her. "You corrected a form and withdrew your authority. That is not permission for 2 years of identity misuse. We will be honest about the history. Honesty is protection here." Then she turned to me. "Did your son have access to a digital copy of your seal?" "He did during Havenbridge's first year. I certified 3 demonstration projects." "How was the file stored?" I pictured the old office above the pharmacy. One shared computer, folders labeled by project, passwords written beneath the keyboard because Andrew said everyone was family. "Poorly," I admitted. After the meeting, Denise asked Miriam to remain with Rebecca. She took me into her office and closed the door. "Harold, Andrew may call before we are ready," she said. "Why?" Elsie's records request will be noticed. If the company monitors unusual requests, someone may connect it to you. What do I say? As little as possible. Do not lie. Do not accuse. Tell him you are not discussing company matters without counsel. I looked through her window at the courthouse steps. He will know. Perhaps. He is my son. Denise leaned back in her chair. That sentence tells me how you are related. It does not tell me what he did. I disliked her for saying it. I trusted her for the same reason. Andrew called that evening. Miriam and I were eating soup at the kitchen table. His name appeared on my phone, and both of us stopped moving. Answer, she said. I put the phone on speaker. Dad, how is Mom? Better. She left quickly Saturday. Camille has been worried. Her stomach settled. There was a pause. Did she go into the East office? The question was too direct to be casual. Why do you ask? One of the staff said a door was left open. There are confidential records in that room. Then the room should have been secured. Another pause, longer this time. Did she take anything? Miriam looked at me. I heard the warning in Denise's voice. Do not lie. She took photographs of pages bearing her name, I said. Andrew exhaled. Dad, those are internal working copies. They say she treated patients. It is complicated. Is it? We migrated to a new record system. Old authorization templates can populate automatically. Camille already has people checking it. My mind returned to a summer afternoon when Andrew was 12. He had been helping me build cabinets and wanted to learn how I signed completed work. I showed him my inspection mark and explained that a signature was not decoration. It meant the person who made it was willing to stand beneath everything above it. He practiced my name on scraps of wood until his letters looked like mine. Why is my contractor seal on Elsie Monroe's invoice? I asked. Silence. Then his voice changed. You went to a client? I went to a woman I know. Dad, you cannot interfere with patient relationships. You could expose Havenbridge to penalties. My name is on work I did not inspect. You gave us permission to use your credentials. For 3 projects, 9 years ago. That is not how our records read. Miriam closed her eyes. Then your records are wrong, I said. Andrew lowered his voice. Please do not do anything before I can explain. Come to the office tomorrow, just you and Mom. We will show you how the system works. Send the explanation through our attorney. He did not speak for several seconds. You hired an attorney? We already had one. Against me? There it was. Not concern about patients. Not shock that false records existed. Betrayal that we had protected ourselves before giving him control of the explanation. For the truth, I said. His response came softly. Be careful who you give those photographs to. Mom could lose her license. You could be sued. And once accusations start, people do not remember who started them. The line went dead. Miriam stared at the phone. Was that a warning? She asked. Yes? Or a threat? I thought about the boy copying my signature on pine boards. I thought about the man telling me that records carried greater authority than my memory. Both, I said. The first letter from Havenbridge arrived by courier the next morning. It was addressed to Miriam. The envelope contained a copy of a consulting agreement dated January 8th, 2 years earlier. According to the agreement, Miriam had accepted responsibility as a part-time clinical advisor and authorized Havenbridge to apply her electronic signature to supervisory documents. Her name appeared on the last page. The signature was clean, centered, and false. The second letter was for me. It included a vendor certification stating that Bennett Residential Improvements remained an approved inspection partner. My seal appeared beside a date on which Miriam and I had been on a train through Canada. Both letters asked us to contact Havenbridge's general counsel if we had questions. They created an answer overnight, Miriam said. Rebecca examined the documents that afternoon. She did not call them forged. Lawyers are careful with words before specialists have examined ink, metadata, and signature histories. These documents are inconsistent with your records, she said. That is enough for now. Denise requested that Havenbridge preserve all emails, access logs, billing records, signature files, and patient documentation connected to either of our names. She also notified our insurers and the state agencies that maintained our professional registrations. The letters were factual, narrow, and impossible to misunderstand. Someone had used our identities. We denied authorization. Records must not be destroyed. Within 48 hours, the first family rumor reached us. My younger brother called from Florida. "Andrew says you are trying to take over his company," he said. "Andrew is wrong. He says Miriam forgot signing a consulting agreement." Miriam was sitting across from me. I watched her hear the words through the speaker. She did not forget. "Harold, people forget things. That does not mean they are crazy." The insult was wrapped in sympathy so carefully that my brother probably believed he was being kind. "Ask Andrew why a dead woman received nursing care last month," I said. He became quiet. Then he told me he did not want to be placed in the middle. People often say that when they have already chosen the easier side. Rebecca helped us file formal identity misuse reports with the nursing board and the state contractor registration office. A Medicaid fraud investigator named Carla Ruiz contacted Denise and asked for an interview. The interview lasted 4 hours. Carla was in her 50s, with a calm face and a legal pad covered in compact handwriting. She did not tell us whether Havenbridge was already under review. She asked how Andrew received our credentials, when authorization ended, what Miriam saw at the house, and whether we had benefited financially from current billing. "We loaned the company $85,000 at startup," I said. "It repaid us with interest." "Did you receive distributions?" "No." "Free travel? Vehicles? Home repairs?" "No." "Did Andrew help with your mortgage or medical expenses?" "No." Carla asked the same questions in different forms. I understood why. Family fraud survives by making personal benefit look like ignorance. When she questioned Miriam about the false nursing forms, my wife gave exact answers until Carla asked about the single incorrect form from 8 years earlier. "I made them remove it," Miriam said. "Did you report it?" "No." "Why not?" Miriam looked at me, then back at Carla. "Because the owner was my son." Carla set down her pen. "Mrs. Bennett, I am going to say something that may be difficult to hear. The reason professionals must report misuse inside their own families is that family loyalty is the tool most often used to continue it." Miriam nodded. "I understand that now." She did not defend herself. That was one of the strongest things I ever saw her do. The investigator asked for the photographs from the housewarming and Elsie's records. Through counsel, Elsie agreed. Her insurance plan opened a separate review. A licensed inspector documented the dangerous bathroom bar and the difference between the work performed and the work billed. I began building a list from public sources. County grant records identified addresses where Havenbridge had received funding for home modifications. Court filings showed subcontractor disputes. State corporate records revealed 3 related companies that shared Havenbridge's mailing address. I did not enter properties. I did not call patients without guidance. I simply marked what could be lawfully seen. 63 projects carried my registration number. 63. Some were small. Others claimed complete bathroom conversions, stair lifts, widened doors, reinforced porches, and emergency electrical work. Total billed value exceeded $900,000. My name appeared not merely at the bottom of invoices. It appeared in grant applications as Havenbridge's senior accessibility specialist. A biography described me as an active consultant with 40 years of experience. The company website displayed a photograph of Andrew and me from the opening of its first office. The caption read, "3 generations of Bennett care," though Sophie had been cropped from the picture. "They built a version of us," I told Miriam. "A useful version," she replied. That version of Miriam never asked about staffing. That version of me approved every job. Those people did not age, object, or withdraw consent. They existed only to make Havenbridge look trustworthy. The nursing board placed a temporary note on Miriam's license while it reviewed the report. It did not suspend her, but the free clinic asked her to pause volunteering until the matter was resolved. The call came from the clinic director on a Thursday. "No one believes you did this," the woman said. "We simply have to protect patients until the board finishes." Miriam thanked her. Then she went into our bedroom and closed the door. I found her sitting on the edge of the bed with her volunteer badge in her hands. "You did nothing wrong," I said. "I did one thing wrong. 8 years ago, I saw a warning and treated it like a family embarrassment instead of a professional danger. You stopped it." I stopped 1 page. I sat beside her. For most of our marriage, Miriam had been the person other people leaned on. She had entered homes where children were angry, spouses were exhausted, and older patients were terrified. Her badge represented more than permission to work. It was proof that the calm people trusted had substance behind it. Our son had taken that trust and turned it into a billing code. "We cannot change what you did not report," I said. "We can change what happens next." She looked toward the window. "What happens next may send Andrew to prison." "I know. Can you live with that?" The honest answer took time. "I can live with telling the truth," I said. "What the truth costs him belongs to the choices he made after we taught him better." Miriam placed the badge in the bedside drawer. "Then we keep going." Our granddaughter arrived after midnight 3 days later. Sophie did not knock like a visitor. She used the brass key we had given her when she was 16 and called from the front hall. "Grandma?" Miriam and I were asleep. By the time I reached the stairs, Sophie was standing beneath the hallway light with a backpack on one shoulder and tears running down her face. She was 21, tall like Andrew, with Miriam's serious eyes. She studied health information management at a community college and worked part-time in Havenbridge's records department. Andrew called the job practical experience. Sophie called it tuition money. "Did your father hurt you?" I asked. "No." "Did Camille?" "No." "I don't know. I need to show you something, but I don't know if I am allowed." Miriam wrapped a robe around her and guided her into the kitchen. We made tea. None of us drank. Sophie had noticed irregularities months earlier. Her job was supposed to involve scanning visit notes and matching them to patient accounts. Instead, a supervisor began asking her to correct dates on forms that had already been signed. When Sophie questioned the changes, she was told Havenbridge used continuity documentation to reconcile late entries. "That means a nurse can write a note later about a visit that really happened," Miriam said. "It does not mean inventing the visit." "I know that now." Sophie opened her backpack but stopped before removing the laptop. "Dad told everyone you and Grandpa are confused. He said you signed agreements years ago and forgot. Then Camille asked me to run an audit of every record using your license number." "Did you?" Miriam asked. I started. There were hundreds. Sophie had seen her grandmother's electronic signature on wound care reviews, medication plan approvals, and aid supervision notes. Some visits occurred while Miriam was out of state. Others were assigned to patients who had died. "I took screenshots," Sophie said, "and I forwarded messages to my personal email." Denise's warnings came back immediately. "Do not show us," I said. Sophie stared at me as if I had rejected her. "Grandpa, they are using both of you." "I believe you. That is why we need to handle this correctly," I called Denise. She answered on the fourth ring with the voice of a woman who had been asleep and resented the law for not keeping business hours. After hearing Sophie's name and position, she became fully awake. "Do not open the company laptop," she said. "Do not delete anything. Do not send any more files. Sophie needs independent counsel before she gives material to anyone." "Am I going to jail?" Sophie whispered. "Not for calling your grandparents, but what you do next matters." Denise arranged for a whistleblower attorney to meet Sophie the next morning. Until then, the laptop remained closed on our kitchen counter. After the call, Sophie began crying harder. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "I kept doing the work." "You believed your father?" I replied. "Is that an excuse?" "No, it is a fact. Facts help us understand how we arrived here. They do not decide what we do now." Miriam moved beside her. "Did you sign any clinical records?" "No." "Did you create visits?" "No." "Did you change dates?" Sophie hesitated. "Twice." Then I stopped. "Why?" One patient's note said she walked 30 feet with assistance. I remembered scanning her obituary the week before. The kitchen went silent. Sophie had confronted her supervisor. The supervisor told her the death date had been entered incorrectly and instructed her to focus on assigned tasks. The next day, her system access was reduced. Camille called her upstairs for lunch. "She said I had a future at Havenbridge," Sophie told us. "She said Dad built the company for me." Then she asked whether Grandma had ever become forgetful. Miriam's face hardened. "What did you say?" "I said everyone forgets things." "And then?" "She asked whether you still drove." I felt anger rise, hot and immediate. Miriam placed one hand over mine. Sophie had not returned to work after the housewarming. Andrew told her to take a week away from the office and avoid speaking with us until he resolved what he called a misunderstanding. That evening, she overheard him and Camille arguing. "Dad said the house was too visible," Sophie said. Camille said visible success was why the investors trusted them. Then Dad asked how much could be moved before the preservation letter took effect. Moved where? I asked. She told him not to say it in the house. That explained the question Andrew had asked when we left the party. He did not fear that Miriam had misunderstood a template. He feared that she had seen the machinery behind it. Sophie slept in our guest room. At breakfast, she looked younger than she had the night before. Fear had removed the confidence she wore at school and work. Her attorney arrived at Denise's office by 10. By noon, Carla Ruiz had been notified through the proper channel. The company laptop and Sophie's personal messages were preserved without being shown to us. Investigators would decide what could be used. Andrew called Sophie 23 times that day. She did not answer. At 4 in the afternoon, he came to our house. I saw his car enter the drive and walked onto the porch before he reached the steps. "Where is she?" he asked. "Safe. She is my daughter. She is an adult. You have turned her against me. I did not tell her what was in your records." He stopped at the bottom step. For the first time since this began, my son looked less angry than afraid. "Dad, there are things about the company you do not understand. I understand a dead woman did not receive nursing care last month. It is billing reconciliation. Services are grouped. Dates are adjusted. Did Mom authorize you to use her signature? She helped create the clinical system. That was not my question." Andrew looked past me toward the front door. "Let Sophie come home. Then you and I can discuss the rest. Her lawyer will discuss it." His expression changed. "You got my daughter a lawyer?" She asked for help. "You are destroying this family." I had imagined that sentence many times since the housewarming. In every version, I answered with a speech that made him ashamed. Standing on the porch, I saw that shame would not enter a person who still believed consequences were attacks. "No," I said. "I am refusing to help you hide what already destroyed it." Andrew climbed one step. "If Haven Bridge falls, 300 people lose jobs. Hundreds of patients lose care. Do you want that on your conscience?" The care already failed. Not all of it. How much fraud becomes acceptable if some work is real? He had no answer. The front door opened behind me. Sophie stepped onto the porch with Miriam. "I am staying here," she told him. Andrew's face softened. "Sweetheart, you do not know what Grandpa has started. I know Grandma did not sign those notes. This is not a conversation for the driveway. You told Camille to ask if Grandma was losing her memory." He looked at Miriam then. Whatever denial he had prepared disappeared. That was not my idea. It was the first truthful sentence he had given us. It was also an admission. Sophie began to cry. Andrew lifted a hand toward her, but she stepped back. He stood in our yard, surrounded by the 3 generations his company used in its advertising. Not one of us moved toward him. Finally, he returned to his car. Before driving away, he lowered the window. "When this becomes public," he said, "you will wish you had let me fix it privately." Sophie watched until his taillights disappeared. "Will I?" she asked. I put my arm around her. "You may wish many things," I said. "You will not wish you helped him continue." Andrew kept his promise about making the dispute public. He did not call a newspaper or post our names online. He did something more effective. He told a careful story to people who loved all of us. In his version, Miriam had once been an authorized clinical advisor but had become confused about the dates. I had panicked, contacted lawyers, and visited a vulnerable client without permission. Sophie, overwhelmed by school and family tension, had misunderstood routine record corrections. Haven Bridge was cooperating with regulators to resolve documentation errors caused by a software transition. The story contained enough truth to travel easily. Miriam had advised the company. I had visited a client. Sophie had changed 2 dates. Software had been replaced. Lies survive best when they do not have to carry their own weight. 2 cousins called to urge peace. A former employee sent me a message saying Andrew had always loved us. Our pastor asked whether the church could mediate. When I said the matter involved patient safety and government billing, he became uncomfortable. "Families need grace," he said. "Patients need real care." He agreed, but he still asked whether we could wait until after Christmas. Scandal is inconvenient on a calendar. The hardest call came from my sister, Ruth Ann, whose fall had inspired Haven Bridge. "Andrew says the company may close because of you," she said. "The company may close because its records are false." He helped me when no one else did. I know. Does that count for nothing? It counts. It does not erase Elsie's dangerous bathroom or Miriam's stolen signature, Ruth Ann cried. She said she could not choose between her brother and her nephew. You do not have to choose people, I told her. Choose whether a signature means anything. She ended the call without answering. Meanwhile, the investigation widened quietly. Elsie's insurance review identified 6 other clients whose records contained the same signature pattern. 2 families agreed to speak with investigators. One man had been billed for transportation on dates his carer had driven him. A widow's bathroom conversion existed only on paper. Another patient had received fewer aid hours than the plan reported. The pattern was not every claim and not every patient. Havenbridge had real nurses, real aides, honest drivers, and legitimate construction work. That complexity made the fraud more dangerous. Good care concealed false care. Honest employees gave dishonest billing a believable face. Rebecca explained that some agencies survive poor documentation and isolated overbilling. Systematic use of false professional identities was different. The question will be who knew, she said, and when. The answer began reaching us through people who had left the company. A former billing manager contacted Denise after hearing that Miriam had denied signing records. She described monthly meetings called gap reviews. Departments listed services that lacked documentation needed for reimbursement. Camille directed staff to locate legacy authorization that could support the claims. When none existed, electronic notes were created from templates. Was Andrew in the meetings? I asked Denise. The witness says he attended several. I went into my workshop and stood among tools I had owned longer than Andrew had been alive. There are parents who discover one terrible act and decide it cannot define their child. I understand that instinct. A life is larger than one act. But fraud was not one act. It was a room entered every morning. It was a decision repeated each time a false visit was submitted, a weak grab bar approved, or an employee ordered to change a date. Andrew had to walk past the exit hundreds of times. The state nursing board scheduled Miriam for an interview. She prepared for days. She organized dates, letters, original policies, and the notice ending her role at Havenbridge. On the morning of the interview, she wore the navy suit she had worn to her retirement ceremony. You look like you are going to work, I said. I am. The interview lasted 2 hours. I waited in the hallway with Sophie. When Miriam emerged, her face was tired but peaceful. They asked whether I would report my son if I could go back, she said. What did you say? I said I would report the form, not the boy. Then I would help the boy face what the form revealed. The board kept the review open, but it allowed her volunteer status to resume under temporary supervision. The clinic director called that afternoon and asked when she could return. Miriam chose the next Saturday. You could wait, I told her. That is what shame wants. At the clinic, patients welcomed her without knowing why she had been absent. She checked blood pressures, reviewed medications, and spent 20 minutes helping a widower understand a discharge sheet. I watched from the reception area. Her hands were steady. Her name belonged to her again in that room. The same week, our bank froze a small business account connected to my old company. Havenbridge's lawyers had sent a notice claiming unresolved ownership rights in projects that used my credentials. No money was taken, but I could not access $22,000 set aside for property taxes and volunteer repairs. Denise called the action intimidation, wrapped as a contract dispute. Camille called it protection of company assets. Then a certified letter arrived demanding that we return the $85,000 startup loan, plus interest. The company argued that the money had actually been an equity investment and that repayments to us were improper distributions. They were asking us to give back money Andrew had already repaid. Why? Sophie asked when she saw the letter. Pressure, Denise said. Legal defense is expensive. They want your grandparents to decide peace is cheaper than truth. The amount did not ruin us, but it was large enough to make us calculate. If the bank dispute expanded, if Miriam needed separate licensing counsel, if Havenbridge sued, years of savings could disappear. That evening, I found Miriam at the kitchen table with a yellow pad. She had listed our accounts, monthly expenses, possible legal fees, and the value of my workshop equipment. We could sell the lake lot, she said. The lot had been our retirement dream. 8 acres beside a narrow lake, with a weathered cabin we repaired slowly each summer. Andrew learned to fish there. Sophie learned to swim there. We had planned to leave it to her. Not yet, I said. Harold, we have to consider it. That is what they want. Wanting it does not make the numbers imaginary. We sat with the arithmetic between us. Quiet justice sounds noble until the first legal invoice arrives. Then it becomes a decision about whether truth is worth a roof, a retirement, or the savings meant for a grandchild. Miriam reached across the table. If we stop because we are afraid of losing the cabin, we will never feel safe there again. I looked at the columns she had written. Then we sell it if we must. She nodded. The decision hurt. It also freed us. Once we knew the price of our silence, Andrew could no longer bargain with the uncertainty. Andrew and Camille came to our house together on the first Sunday in October. Denise had advised us not to discuss the investigation without counsel. We told them she would attend. Camille objected, then arrived with Havenbridge's general counsel, a man named Paul Renner. 4 visitors sat around the same oak table where Andrew had presented his business plan 10 years earlier. I made coffee. Miriam placed a plate of cookies in the center out of habit. No one touched them. Andrew looked tired. His suit hung loosely at the shoulders, and the confident warmth had left his face. Camille looked exactly as she had at the housewarming, composed, prepared, and irritated by anything she could not control. Paul opened a leather folder. Everyone here wants to protect the family and the patients, he began. Denise said, then we can skip the speech and read the proposal. He slid a document across the table. Havenbridge offered to acknowledge administrative misuse of Miriam's nursing identifier and my contractor registration. The company would correct affected records, pay our legal expenses up to a fixed amount, release all claims concerning the startup money, and make a $200,000 contribution to a local senior charity. In return, Miriam and I would sign retroactive consulting agreements confirming that Havenbridge had permission to store and apply our credentials. We would describe all improper use as unintentional software error. We would withdraw complaints where legally possible, decline voluntary interviews, and agree not to disparage the company. Sophie would resign, return all materials, and sign a separate confidentiality agreement. You want us to validate the records after the fact? Miriam said. We want to clarify that your authorization was broader than the paper documents reflected, Camille replied. It was not. You helped build the system. I helped write policies. I did not give you my name forever. Andrew leaned forward. Mom, no one is asking you to approve false care. We are asking you to acknowledge a confusing transition. Did Mrs. Bell receive care 3 weeks after she died? His eyes dropped. Camille answered. Individual examples should be reviewed in context. Death is a clear context, I said. Paul raised a hand. We are not here to litigate facts across a kitchen table. You brought a contract to a kitchen table, Denise replied. Andrew pushed his chair back slightly. Dad, if this continues, Havenbridge will fail before anyone decides what actually happened. Banks are already asking questions. Referrals are paused. Good employees are leaving. Did you attend gap review meetings? I asked. He looked at Camille. That small glance answered more than a denial would have. I attended operational meetings, he said. Camille oversaw billing. For the first time, irritation flashed across her face. You approved every reconciliation policy, based on your reports. Do not do this, she said quietly. The room changed. Until that moment, they had come as a company. In one sentence, Andrew revealed that he was also looking for a place to stand when the company collapsed. Miriam saw it too. When did you first know my signature was being used? She asked him. I knew your identifier remained in the system. That was not my question. He rubbed both hands over his face. A hospital contract required clinical oversight ratios we could not meet. We had nurses. We had visits. Documentation was late. Camille said the system could apply an approved supervisory template until the notes caught up. My template, Miriam said, at first. And when did you learn visits were being created? Camille turned to him. You do not have to answer that. Andrew stared at the table. Last year. The word landed softly. Miriam did not move. Last year, she repeated. I ordered an internal review. You bought a $1,400,000 house. The house is financed. With what income? My compensation. From claims signed in my name? Andrew looked at her then. and I saw the frightened boy beneath the executive. For one dangerous second, I wanted to rescue him. I wanted to interrupt, blame Camille, and tell him to come home. Then I remembered Elsie asking whether she was in trouble. We were going to sell a division, Andrew said. The buyer's money would have corrected every billing problem. Patients would keep their care. Employees would keep their jobs. No one would lose anything. The patient who reached for a loose grab bar could have lost her life, I said. That was a subcontractor. My name certified it. I did not place the bar. Neither did I. But you used my seal so the government would believe someone had accepted responsibility. He stood and walked to the window. You think the world is still your workshop, he said. One person measures. One person signs. One person is responsible. That is not how a company this size works. Then why did you need one person's signature? He had no answer. Camille reached for the contract. This offer expires Friday. Miriam placed her hand on the pages. Leave it. Hope appeared on Andrew's face. My wife looked directly at him. I want to remember exactly what my son asked me to sign. Camille released the papers. They left without drinking the coffee. At the front door, Andrew turned back. If I go to prison, Mom, will this have been worth it? Miriam's face crumpled for a moment. She loved him. Nothing that had happened removed that love. It only removed the right to use it as a shield. I am not choosing prison for you, she said. I am refusing to choose it for an innocent nurse, contractor, or patient in your place. He looked at me. I opened the door. After their cars left, Miriam returned to the kitchen and sat before the contract. Her hands trembled. I wanted to sign it, she whispered. I know. For 1 second, I wanted to sign anything that would make him our son again. I sat beside her. He is still our son. Then why does telling the truth feel like losing him? I had no answer that could make the pain smaller. So I took her hand, and we stayed at the table where Havenbridge had begun until the coffee became cold. The first Havenbridge employee came to our door on a rainy Wednesday. Her name was Tasha Green. She had been one of the company's first home health aides and now supervised 32 caregivers. Miriam remembered interviewing her above the pharmacy. Tasha had arrived 20 minutes early, carried 3 reference letters, and asked whether the company guaranteed enough travel time between patients. A rushed aid is a dangerous aid, she had said. Miriam hired her that afternoon. Now Tasha stood on our porch in wet scrubs, holding an envelope. I am not supposed to contact you, she said. I don't know if coming here is right. Then do not give us anything, I replied. We can call our attorney. Relief crossed her face. Within an hour, Denise connected Tasha with independent counsel and the investigator. We did not open the envelope. Before she left, Tasha asked to speak with Miriam alone. My wife brought her into the living room. I stayed in the kitchen but heard Tasha crying. Later, Miriam told me why. Tasha had believed Havenbridge was one of the better agencies. When staffing was sufficient, her aides provided excellent care. She had personally driven through a snowstorm to bring insulin to a client. She had sat beside a dying veteran until his daughter arrived. She had trained workers to listen before touching a frightened person. But staffing was rarely sufficient anymore. Schedulers assigned the same aide to patients 40 minutes apart in different towns. When visits were missed, supervisors were told to mark them rescheduled. At the end of each month, billing records sometimes showed the original visit as completed and a second visit added later. Tasha complained. Camille's team showed her data proving the company had a 97% service rate. I knew that number was not true, she told Miriam, but I thought it meant someone above me was fixing coverage. I did not think they were fixing records. Her envelope contained copies of complaints she had filed through Havenbridge's internal compliance line. The line was supposed to be anonymous. After her second complaint, Camille called her into a meeting and quoted a sentence from it. She knew it was me, Tasha said. She told me loyalty mattered during growth. Havenbridge had many people like Tasha. Honest nurses, aides, drivers, carpenters, and schedulers worked beneath reports designed to turn their effort into a shield. Whenever Andrew warned that the investigation would hurt 300 employees, he was telling the truth. He was also using those employees the same way he had used our names. That realization changed how I spoke about the company. I stopped saying Havenbridge was fraudulent. I said its leaders had authorized false records. I stopped saying its care was imaginary. I said real care had been mixed with claims for care that did not occur. Precision mattered, not because Andrew deserved softer language, but because innocent workers deserved separation from his choices. The public separation became urgent when the county announced Havenbridge as the leading candidate for a 5-year aging-at-home partnership. The contract would coordinate transportation, nursing, meals, and home modifications for thousands of older residents. Its potential value exceeded $12 million. Andrew had pursued it for almost 2 years. The county released a promotional video before the final board vote. Sophie found it online and called us into the living room. The video opened with Andrew walking through Havenbridge's office. Employees smiled behind him. An aide helped an older man stand. A carpenter installed a polished handrail. Then our family photograph filled the screen. It showed Miriam and me outside the first office with our hands on Andrew's shoulders. My parents spent their lives helping people remain useful, independent, and respected, Andrew said in the narration. Havenbridge carries their standards into every home. Miriam watched without blinking. Next came a quotation attributed to her. Good care begins when the professional signing the plan is willing to answer for it. She had said those words during the first staff training. They are using you to win a county contract, Sophie said. They have been using us for years, I replied. The video ended with Andrew standing in the new house's lower-level guest suite. He described it as a model for multi-generational living and said his own parents would always have a safe place with him. That was the suite he had urged us to see as we left the party. Miriam walked out of the room. I found her on the porch. He built that room for the camera, she said. Maybe he intended us to use it. Would that make the lie kinder? The county board vote was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Carla Ruiz asked us not to contact board members while investigators coordinated with state and federal agencies. She could not tell us whether the vote would be stopped. What if they approve it? I asked. The contract includes compliance conditions. A condition does not protect someone who gets a bad grab bar next month. Carla understood. She also had an investigation to protect. If Havenbridge learned too much about the evidence, records might disappear, witnesses might be pressured, and money might move beyond recovery. Rebecca proposed a narrow approach. Denise would notify the county attorney that our names and credentials were disputed and that active regulatory reports existed. We would not share confidential evidence or make claims beyond our direct knowledge. The county attorney acknowledged the letter but refused to say whether the vote would be postponed. On Monday evening, Andrew telephoned. Do not come tomorrow, he said. I was in the workshop, sanding a maple board for no purpose other than keeping my hands occupied. Why would we? The board may ask about your letter. Then we will answer. Dad, this contract can stabilize the company. Once it is approved, I can correct everything without layoffs. With more public money? With predictable revenue. For services you may or may not provide? That is not fair. Fair is an invoice that describes what happened. He was quiet. If the contract fails, Camille will sell her interest. The lenders will call our debt. Sophie will lose whatever future the company was supposed to give her. Sophie does not want that future. She is 21. She does not know what she wants. She knows she does not want her grandmother's login. Andrew's breath came through the phone. I am asking you as your son, and I am answering as your father. Withdraw the bid, protect the patients, and tell the board why. I cannot. Then we will be there. Before he hung up, he said something I had not expected. Dad, I remember the first ramp we built together. I closed my eyes. It had been for a retired school custodian. Andrew was 34, the company was new, and he worked beside me for 10 hours in August heat. When we finished, the man rolled onto his porch for the first time in 7 months. Andrew sat in the truck afterward and cried. So do I said. I was not pretending. I know. That was the tragedy. The good he once wanted had been real. It simply had not remained more important than the life he believed success owed him. The boardroom was full 30 minutes before the meeting began. Havenbridge employees wore blue badges and filled 3 rows. Several had brought patients. County staff lined the walls. Reporters sat near the front because rumors of a regulatory dispute had begun circulating after the attorney's letter became part of the public agenda. Miriam and I sat in the back with Denise, Rebecca, and Sophie. Andrew entered through a side door with Camille and Paul Renner. He did not look toward us. The first hour concerned road repairs, library funding, and a zoning appeal. Ordinary business continued while my heart beat as if the room were on fire. Then the chair announced the aging at home contract. Andrew approached the lectern. He gave the best presentation I had ever heard him give. He spoke about demographic change, rural isolation, hospital readmissions, and the cost of premature nursing home placement. He told the board that dignity required coordination. He praised Havenbridge employees by name. He described a widow who remained in the home she shared with her husband because an aide, a driver, and a carpenter worked from one plan. Every principle was true. That made listening harder. Camille presented outcomes. 97% of scheduled visits completed, 94% patient satisfaction, 40% reduction in falls after home modification. She displayed charts polished enough to make doubt appear irresponsible. A commissioner asked about the letter from Miriam and me. Paul stepped to the microphone. Havenbridge is resolving a private documentation disagreement with 2 former consultants, he said. No finding of wrongdoing has been made. The individuals are family members of our founder, which has unfortunately complicated communication. Former consultants. Private disagreement. Family complication. 3 phrases turned hundreds of false records into an embarrassing holiday argument. The chair asked whether anyone wished to address the board during public comment. Denise touched my arm. Only what we prepared. Miriam stood first. The room became quiet as she walked down the aisle. Some employees recognized her. Tasha sat near the center and lowered her eyes. At the lectern, Miriam adjusted the microphone. My name is Miriam Bennett, she said. I am a registered nurse. I retired from paid practice 6 years ago and volunteer at a free clinic. Her voice shook on the first sentence and steadied on the second. I helped Havenbridge write early clinical policies for 90 days during its first year. I did not authorize continued use of my signature or nursing license. Current records state that I supervised patient care on dates when I was not present and for patients I did not know. At least one listed patient was deceased. Murmurs moved through the room. Paul rose. Chair, this relates to an active, confidential matter. The county attorney told him to sit. Miriam continued. I am not asking you to assume a crime. I am asking you not to award a public care contract based on my name, my quotation, or the representation that I oversee Havenbridge. I do not. She stepped away. Andrew stared straight ahead. Then I walked to the lectern. My name is Harold Bennett. Havenbridge Materials describe me as its senior accessibility specialist. I am not. My contractor registration expired 9 years ago. It appears on dozens of current projects I did not inspect. I placed a single photograph on the document camera. It showed Elsie's loose grab bar after the anchor pulled from the wall. Her name and address had been removed. This was installed in an older woman's bathroom. The invoice described a complete safety conversion, certified with my seal. I would not have approved this bar for a towel, much less a human body. One of the Havenbridge employees began crying. I looked at the board. My son founded this company around an idea Miriam and I still believe in. Older people should be able to live safely at home. Honest employees at Havenbridge work every day to make that possible. They deserve leadership whose records tell the truth about their work. Patients deserve the same. I returned to my seat. The chair called a recess. In the hallway, reporters surrounded Denise. She repeated that we would not discuss an active investigation. Havenbridge employees stood in uncertain groups. Some looked at us with anger. Others avoided Andrew. He found me beside a drinking fountain. You humiliated Mom, he said. She spoke for herself. You made our family evidence. You put our family in the presentation. His jaw tightened. Do you understand what happens if they suspend the vote? You lose money. Patients lose continuity. Then give their records to a provider that can be trusted. You think transfer is simple? Some of these people have had the same aid for years. He was right. The truth did not make transition easy. I hated him for using a real danger to defend the cause of it. Withdraw, I said. Work with the county on an orderly transfer. And confess to what? A documentation system Camille designed? You knew last year. He looked toward the boardroom where his wife stood talking to Paul. Knowing something is wrong is not the same as knowing everything. What did you do after you knew enough? He said, nothing. The board reconvened after 40 minutes. By unanimous vote, it postponed the contract and directed the county attorney to review Havenbridge's eligibility. The current home care agreements would remain temporarily in place under additional oversight so patients were not abandoned. It was not victory. No charge had been filed. No money had been recovered. Miriam's license review remained open. Havenbridge still operated, but the company did not receive $12 million behind our names. As we left, Tasha approached Miriam in front of the cameras. "Thank you for saying there are good people inside," she said. Miriam hugged her. The photograph appeared online that evening. Some comments called us brave. Others accused us of destroying our son's business out of jealousy. One person wrote that old parents should know when to step aside. I closed the page. At dinner, Sophie asked whether we had won. "No," I said. "We told the truth in a room where it mattered." "Isn't that winning?" Miriam considered the question. "Sometimes," she said, "it is only the next honest thing." The company that planned to buy Havenbridge's home modification division withdrew 4 days after the county meeting. Its due diligence team had asked for proof that professional certifications were valid. Havenbridge could not provide it without revealing the dispute. The sale would have brought enough money to satisfy a line of credit due at the end of the month. The bank froze Havenbridge's expansion accounts. Camille filed for temporary protection from creditors. Andrew called Denise and asked for a private meeting without his wife or company lawyer. She refused to meet secretly, but arranged a conversation with his criminal attorney present. Miriam and I were not invited. That was better. By then, every family conversation had become an opportunity to rewrite memory. 2 days later, Denise told us only what affected our decisions. Andrew wanted to separate himself from Camille. He claimed she designed the false documentation system, controlled related companies, and moved money without fully informing him. He was considering cooperation with investigators. "Does cooperation mean telling the truth?" Miriam asked. "It should. Or telling enough truth to reduce his sentence. Those things can overlap." The distinction hurt her, but law is often less interested in pure motives than useful evidence. Investigators had identified 3 companies linked to Havenbridge. One provided medical staffing. Another supplied construction materials. The third owned equipment leased back to the agency. Camille held interests through her brother and a former college roommate. Havenbridge paid the companies at above-market rates. Money from those payments helped fund the down payment on the new house. Andrew's salary paid the mortgage, but his salary came from a company drained through false claims and related party contracts. The house had not been purchased with one stolen check. It had been built from thousands of small decisions that turned public care money into private comfort. The hidden office at the party served as an after-hours document center. Staff members were sometimes brought to the house before audits to complete missing notes. The locked cabinets held records scheduled for reconciliation. Miriam had opened the door during one of those weekends. Sophie's evidence became important because of one message from Camille. "Use M.B. clinical admin for the legacy queue. We need clean supervision before county review." The message had been sent to a records supervisor 2 weeks before the housewarming. System logs showed hundreds of files accessed through a dormant administrator profile bearing Miriam's initials. Andrew had received a copy of the monthly report showing that profile's activity. He could no longer say he knew only of an isolated problem last year. The same logs revealed use of my digital seal. A construction manager uploaded it to projects from his office account. Emails showed he asked Andrew whether I still approved Havenbridge work. Andrew replied, "Dad supports the mission. Keep projects moving." 7 words. No direct order to forge a certification. No explicit permission. Just enough ambiguity for an employee to do what revenue required. I read the sentence until the screen blurred. When Andrew was young, he often asked permission in a way that made refusal seem unnecessary. "Dad won't mind" came before he borrowed a tool, stayed out late, or invited friends to the lake cabin. Most of the time I did not mind. Sometimes I laughed at his confidence. He had built a management style from that childhood habit. Approval was assumed until someone had the strength to revoke it, and revocation became disloyalty. The state executed search warrants at Havenbridge's main office and Andrew's new house on a Monday morning. We learned from the news. Television footage showed agents carrying boxes through the same portico where Andrew had asked why we were leaving. Employees stood outside the office holding phones. A reporter described an investigation involving billing, professional identity misuse, and public grants. Sophie turned off the television. "Everyone at school will see that." Miriam sat beside her. You did not send agents to the house. My messages helped. Your messages showed what was already there. At noon, Andrew called me from his attorney's office. They took Mom's photographs, he said. They took records bearing Mom's name. They took Sophie's computer. Her attorney arranged that weeks ago. Camille says I am the target. What does your lawyer say? He says I should cooperate. Then cooperate. His voice broke. Dad, I could lose everything. The sentence made me angry in a way his threats had not. Elsie could have lost her balance. Miriam could have lost her license. Sophie could have lost her future. Taxpayers lost money. Employees may lose jobs. You keep using the word everything as if it belongs only to you. He began to cry. I had heard Andrew cry at funerals, after his first marriage ended, and when Sophie was born. A father does not become immune to that sound because his child is 44. I did not mean for this to happen, he said. Meaning is where a decision starts. Responsibility is where it ends. Camille told me all large companies reconcile records. Did you believe her? I needed to. That was the most honest answer he had given me. He needed the bank to extend credit. He needed the county contract. He needed investors to see growth. He needed the house to prove he had succeeded. Each need had become permission to ignore the next warning. Tell them everything, I said. Will you stand by me? I looked across the kitchen at Miriam. She could hear both sides of the call. I will not lie for you. I will not attack you. I will not stop loving you. That isn't what I asked. It is what I can give, he ended the call. Miriam stared at the dark phone. Was it enough? I asked. It has to be. Havenbridge stopped billing government programs in November. The decision was part suspension, part agreement. Regulators allowed the company to continue limited private pay services under an outside clinical administrator, while counties and insurers transferred vulnerable clients to other agencies. A court-appointed restructuring officer took control of finances. Andrew resigned as chief executive. Camille was removed by the board. For the first time in 10 years, neither of them held a key to the office. The transfers were painful. Some patients refused unfamiliar aids. Drivers lost routes. Nurses spent hours reconstructing medication plans from unreliable records. County workers opened emergency lines. Local agencies absorbed more clients than they were staffed to serve. Andrew's warning had been partly correct. When leaders corrupt a care system, innocent people suffer even when the corruption stops. Miriam volunteered with a transition team after the nursing board approved the role. She did not work on any Havenbridge record bearing her signature. Instead, she helped families compare medication lists and identify the last visit that actually occurred. I joined a county inspection group. We checked accessibility work at homes selected by regulators. Some projects were excellent. Others were incomplete. A few existed only as materials left in garages. At one house, an 87-year-old veteran named Lewis Carter had paid nothing but supposedly received a $26,000 bathroom conversion. Havenbridge had replaced his toilet seat and delivered a shower chair. I thought the rest was coming, he said. The invoice carried my seal. I sat in his kitchen and apologized. You didn't do it, Louis replied. My name helped them say it was done. Then use your name to help finish it. The county could not immediately fund new work while the claim remained under review. I called former colleagues and asked for donated labor. A plumbing supplier provided fixtures at cost. We completed the bathroom through a church program, documented every hour, and sent copies to Louis. That project became the beginning of something I had not planned. More former Havenbridge workers contacted us. Carpenters wanted to correct unsafe jobs. Drivers offered to help patients reach appointments during transfer delays. A scheduler created a volunteer call list. Tasha coordinated aids on weekends without asking anyone to ignore labor law or falsify hours. We named the effort Clear Hands because Sophie said every job should be visible from request to receipt. Denise made us create proper policies before touching another project. Good intentions are how Havenbridge began, she reminded us. Documentation protects good people too. Every volunteer logged time. Every client received a scope of work. Every inspection was independent. No one used my seal. I had no active registration, so I worked under licensed professionals and signed only as a volunteer carpenter. Miriam did not sign clinical plans. She educated families and referred medical questions to active providers. Boundaries felt slow. They also felt clean. The new house was listed for sale before Thanksgiving. Photographs appeared online. The wine room, the pool, the stone fireplace, the lower-level suite. The asking price was slightly below what Andrew and Camille had paid. A court order directed proceeds toward secured debt and possible restitution. Sophie looked through the listing once. "My room is still painted green," she said. She had slept there only 3 nights. Andrew moved into a furnished apartment near his attorney's office. Camille moved to her sister's condominium and stopped speaking to Sophie except through messages reviewed by counsel. Their marriage had become another asset under examination. For Thanksgiving, Sophie stayed with us. Ruth Ann came too. She arrived carrying 2 pies and an apology. "I wanted the version where Andrew helped me to be the whole truth," she said. "It was part of the truth," Miriam replied. "How do I hold both? Without dropping the part that hurts?" My brother joined by video from Florida. The conversation was awkward but honest. No one defended false records. No one called Andrew a monster. We said his name when telling old stories because erasing every good memory would have been another kind of lie. After dinner, Andrew called. Miriam put the phone on speaker. "Happy Thanksgiving," he said. Everyone answered quietly. He asked what we had eaten. Sophie told him about the pies. Ruth Ann described the sweet potatoes. For 5 minutes, we sounded like a family discussing a holiday. Then Andrew said, "My lawyer believes charges are coming." The room became still. "Are you going to tell the truth?" Sophie asked. "Yes." "All of it?" He hesitated. "All that I know." Sophie closed her eyes. "That sounds like lawyer language. I have to be careful." "You were careful when you used Grandma's name." Miriam touched Sophie's arm. Andrew did not respond with anger. "You're right," he said. It was a small sentence. No one forgave him because of it. No agency reopened. No patient received money. But it was the first time he accepted a judgment without redirecting it. Before ending the call, he asked whether he could visit us after the charges were resolved. "Not yet," Miriam said. "When?" "When you can enter this house without asking us to make you innocent." He whispered good night. Later, I walked through our quiet living room. The furniture was old. The kitchen needed new flooring. Cold air entered around one window despite caulk I had applied twice. Nothing in our house impressed investors, but every object in it had been purchased, made, repaired, or given with names that belonged to the people using them. For the first time since the party, I understood why the mansion had felt empty before anyone moved out. Charges were filed in February. Andrew and Camille were accused of conspiring to submit false healthcare claims, using professional identities without authorization, and making false statements in public grant applications. Camille faced additional counts connected to the related companies. 2 billing managers were charged separately. Investigators said other employees had cooperated and would not be prosecuted. The news placed Andrew's photograph beside words no parent expects to see. Founder. Fraud. Defendant. Miriam read the article once, folded the newspaper, and put it in a drawer. She did not throw it away. She said forgetting was not the same as healing. Andrew entered a plea agreement 3 months later. He admitted that he knew Miriam's signature and my seal were being used after our authorization ended. He admitted that he allowed false records to support claims and public contracts. He admitted that he failed to stop the practice because disclosure would threaten Havenbridge's financing and the sale he hoped would repair its accounts. Camille pleaded not guilty and prepared for trial. At Andrew's plea hearing, Miriam and I sat behind him. We did not sit with his legal team, and we did not sit with reporters. Sophie sat between us. The judge asked Andrew whether anyone had forced him to plead. "No, Your Honor." "Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?" He swallowed. "Yes." The judge reviewed the conduct in plain language. Each time she asked whether the statement was accurate, Andrew answered with his own name and his own voice. No template spoke for him. No employee initialed the page. No parent stood beneath the responsibility. When the hearing ended, Andrew turned toward us. A court officer allowed him a moment. "Mom," he said. Miriam touched his cheek. "Tell the whole truth at sentencing." He nodded. Then he looked at me. "I kept thinking I could fix it before you found out." "You knew patients had already found out," I said. "They just did not know what to call it." He lowered his eyes. Sophie hugged him. It was brief and painful. Love remained, but it no longer performed the work of denial. Andrew later provided records that helped recover money from the related companies. He explained how Camille directed transfers and how he approved reports without asking questions he feared. His cooperation reduced his sentence, but it did not erase it. Before sentencing, the court invited written statements from patients, employees, insurers, and anyone whose professional identity had been used. Denise asked whether Miriam and I wanted to submit one. Would it help him? Miriam asked. That depends on what you write. Would it hurt him? That also depends on what you write. For 3 nights, we tried. My first draft sounded like an accusation. Miriam's first draft sounded like a mother begging the judge to remember the boy Andrew had been. Neither felt complete. We began again. We wrote that Andrew had once wanted to solve a real problem, and that many patients received real help from people he hired. We wrote that his early compassion made the later choices more painful, not less serious. He understood exactly why professional signatures mattered. He knew why older people depended on records they could not independently verify. He used that knowledge to make false claims credible. We did not request the longest sentence. We did not request no sentence. We asked the court to require full disclosure, restitution, and a prohibition against controlling other people's care money until trust could be lawfully earned. Miriam ended the statement with one paragraph. I love my son. Love is the reason I want the court to sentence the man who made these choices, not a false version of him presented by either the prosecution or his family. Mercy without truth would teach him the same lesson that allowed this harm to grow, that another person's care will absorb the cost of his fear. Elsie submitted her own statement. At sentencing, she walked to the lectern with a new cane and a purple sweater. She described the loose grab bar, the visits billed while she was away, and the moment she asked whether she was in trouble. I had lived honestly for 84 years, she said, and one company's paperwork made me afraid that my own memory was evidence against me. Then she looked at Andrew. Your parents came to my house and told me I was not to blame. You built a company for people my age. You should have known we needed to hear that from you. Tasha spoke about workers who doubted their own schedules because management reports said missed visits had occurred. A nurse described discovering that her late notes had been combined with Miriam's false supervision. A county official explained how unreliable outcomes delayed funding for other providers. Andrew listened without raising his head. When it was his turn, he did not give the speech his public relations staff might once have written. He said he had treated every crisis as temporary until dishonesty became the normal method of surviving the next month. He apologized to patients by name when privacy allowed it. He apologized to employees for using their good work to defend false reports. Then he faced us. I said I built Havenbridge from what my parents taught me, he said. That was only true at the beginning. Later, I used their reputations to cover the distance between what I promised and what I delivered. They did not betray me by telling the truth. I betrayed them by making truth dangerous. Miriam gripped my hand. The apology did not repair the years. It did not replace public money or remove fear from Elsie's memory. But it mattered because it did not contain the word if. The judge sentenced him to 30 months in federal custody, followed by supervision, and ordered restitution jointly with the other defendants. She prohibited him from managing any company receiving healthcare funds for years after his release. Camille was convicted after trial. Her sentence was longer. Some viewers of the news called that justice. Miriam cried for 3 days. Justice can be necessary and still break a mother's heart. The nursing board cleared Miriam in a written decision that summer. It found no evidence that she created, approved, or knowingly benefited from the false records. It also noted that she had withdrawn her original authority, reported the later misuse, cooperated fully, and helped protect patients during the transfer. The decision included one sentence about the form she failed to report 8 years earlier. Earlier notification would have reduced the opportunity for continued misuse. Miriam read that sentence longer than all the others. They cleared you, I said. They also told the truth. She asked the board to publish the decision rather than keep it private. Rebecca warned that public release might renew attention. Miriam insisted. My name was used publicly, she said. It should be returned publicly. The free clinic held a small lunch in her honor. There were paper plates, grocery store cake, and no cameras. The director gave her a new badge because the old one had cracked. Miriam placed it around her neck, then surprised everyone by announcing she would stop direct nursing practice at the end of the year. I am not leaving because someone pushed me out, she said. I am choosing where my experience belongs next. She wanted to teach older patients and families how to read care plans, verify provider credentials, and challenge bills without shame. My contractor registration office issued a similar finding. The state confirmed that my expired number had been used without current authority. It removed my name from all disputed project approvals and referred the files for restitution review. I did not renew the registration. Instead, I completed a volunteer safety assessor course and agreed never to inspect work completed by a team I led. Another professional would always provide the final approval. After everything, you want someone checking you? Sophie asked. Especially after everything. Clear Hands received a small grant from the county that had postponed the Havenbridge contract. We accepted only after Denise reviewed the controls. The grant paid for independent inspections, a patient advocate, and a public ledger showing where every dollar went. At the first meeting, Elsie Monroe sat in the front row. Are you going to make me read all that paperwork? She asked. You are a librarian, I said. We are counting on it. She became our most demanding volunteer. The mansion sold 11 months after the housewarming. Its price had fallen. Legal notices frightened buyers, and the market had cooled. After the mortgage, taxes, and sale expenses were paid, the remaining proceeds entered the restitution fund. The wine room did not save anyone. The pool did not protect a job. The lower-level suite never held our furniture. Our startup loan became part of the bankruptcy claims. We recovered less than half of what the company had repaid us, and the remaining legal expenses consumed most of that. Technically, we lost money twice. We did not sell the lake lot. Once the cases ended, the bank released my business account and Havenbridge withdrew its civil claims. Denise sent us a final invoice, smaller than we feared and larger than we liked. The cabin remained ours. That summer, Sophie joined us there. She had changed her program from health information management to healthcare compliance. At first, I worried she was choosing a life built around her father's failure. I am choosing the part that stops another family from reaching this point, she told me. We repaired the dock together. Sophie measured the new boards, marked screw locations, and rejected one piece of lumber because it was slightly twisted. You are becoming difficult, I said. Grandma says precision is respect. She stole that from Elsie. On the last evening, Andrew called from prison. The connection was limited and recorded. He asked about the lake. Is the old canoe still leaking? He said. Only when it touches water, he laughed. For a moment, I heard the man he might have become. Then he said, I am sorry about the money. The money was the easiest part. I know that now. He told us he was tutoring another inmate in basic accounting. The irony was not lost on any of us. Before the call ended, he asked whether he would ever be allowed at the cabin again. I looked at the water. The answer could not be punishment forever, but it could not be comfort promised in advance. When you are released, we start with coffee in town, I said. Trust gets smaller steps than love. He accepted that. It was the first plan between us that did not depend on pretending the past was over. After the call, Sophie and I carried 2 chairs to the end of the dock. The lake was flat enough to reflect every cloud. Do you think Dad will change? She asked. I think he can. That is not the same answer. No. She watched a dragonfly settle on the railing. I want to forgive him before he comes home, she said. I am afraid that if I do, everyone will expect me to trust him. Forgiveness is not a job offer, a house key, or permission to manage your life. Grandma said almost the same thing. She usually says it better. Sophie smiled. I told her she did not owe Andrew a schedule for healing. She could answer letters and still refuse visits. She could meet him once and wait months before meeting again. She could love the father who taught her to ride a bicycle while protecting herself from the man who asked her to alter records. Older people are often told family peace requires forgetting. Younger people are told anger proves disloyalty. Both ideas make honesty harder than it needs to be. Boundaries are not a verdict on whether someone can change, I said. They are the conditions under which you can safely see whether change is real. Sophie leaned her head against my shoulder. We sat until the clouds moved beyond the lake, leaving the water clear enough to show what stood above it. Andrew wrote to us near the end of his first year in custody. The letter was 12 pages long. The first 10 described his childhood, the company, Camille's pressure, the banks, the employees, and the fear of failure. Each explanation was true. Together, they sounded like a new defense. On page 11, his tone changed. He wrote that the first false form had frightened him. Instead of stopping, he learned the fear would fade if revenue arrived. The second form was easier. By the time hundreds existed, he no longer asked whether each claim was true. He asked whether the company could survive without it. Then he wrote, "I used the good things you taught me as advertising and treated the limits you taught me as obstacles. I did not steal your signatures only because they were useful. I stole them because I believed being your son meant your character belonged to me." Miriam read that paragraph aloud twice. The letter did not ask us to forgive him. It did not ask Sophie to visit. It did not blame Camille. It listed patients he remembered and employees he had failed. It promised restitution payments from whatever lawful work he could find after release. "This is the first apology he has written," Miriam said. "He has apologized before. He apologized for consequences. This is for choices." We answered together. We told him we loved him. We told him love would not restore authority, money, or trust by itself. We told him there would be boundaries after release. No access to our accounts, no business partnership, no use of our names, and no pressure on Sophie. Contact would grow only through consistent action. Then Miriam added one line. "You are more than the worst thing you did, but becoming more requires you to stop asking others to carry it." We mailed the letter. Forgiveness did not arrive as a warm feeling. It arrived as the decision to leave a door visible without removing its lock. 2 years after the housewarming, Clear Hands moved into my old workshop. The building had once held cabinet saws, stacks of oak, and apprentices who learned to keep their fingers away from blades. We cleaned the floors, improved the lighting, and divided the space into 3 simple rooms. One room held a long table where families could bring bills, care plans, and grant forms. One held demonstration rails, shower seats, ramps, and door hardware so older people could test equipment before accepting it. The last room belonged to volunteers who verified licenses, matched invoices to completed work, and called clients after every project. Nothing was locked during open hours. On the wall, we displayed one rule. The person whose name is on the work must be willing to answer for it. We did not put Miriam's quotation beneath it. We did not need a family name to make the rule true. At the opening, Elsie cut the ribbon with sewing scissors from her kitchen. Tasha brought 6 former Haven Bridge employees who had found work at ethical agencies. Sophie demonstrated the public ledger. Denise stood beside the coffee and warned anyone who would listen not to sign documents without reading them. Miriam wore her volunteer badge. I stood near the back and watched older neighbors enter with folders held against their chests. Some were embarrassed. Some were angry. Most simply wanted another person to explain what had been done in their names. The first couple at our table were George and Linda Harris, both in their late 70s. A company had charged them for a stair lift that stopped working after 6 weeks, then told them the warranty required a service plan they had never seen. Linda kept apologizing for not understanding the contract. George kept saying he should have protected her. Sophie spread the papers across the table and found the warranty on page 14. It did not require a service plan. Tasha called the manufacturer, and I inspected the installation beside a licensed technician. A loose connection caused the failure. The repair took 20 minutes. When the lift carried Linda safely upstairs, George began to cry. "We thought we had made a foolish mistake," he said. "Asking for help is not foolish," Miriam told him. "A contract designed to exhaust you is the problem." They returned the next month as volunteers. George greeted people at the door. Linda organized warranty folders by date. No one paid them, photographed them for advertising, or counted their kindness as a billed service. That small repair taught me more about honest care than any chart Andrew had presented. The work itself mattered, but so did the way responsibility remained visible, from the first question to the final test. That was when I understood what our son had almost taken from us. It was not only money, reputation, or professional standing. He had nearly taken our willingness to trust the work of helping people. We chose not to give him that. Andrew came home the following spring. Our first meeting was coffee in town, exactly as promised. He looked older and quieter. He did not ask for a job at Clear Hands. He did not ask to live with us. He brought a list of restitution payments and asked whether Sophie might meet him when she was ready. She eventually did. Our family did not return to what it had been. Returning was never the goal. We built something smaller, slower, and more honest. Sometimes visitors ask whether I regret giving Andrew the original $85,000. I regret ignoring early warnings. I regret mistaking success for proof of character. I regret every patient who had to question whether care was real. But I do not regret believing my son could build something good. The belief was not the failure. The failure would have been protecting the appearance of good after the truth became clear. At the housewarming, Miriam whispered that we had to leave. She was right. We had to leave the mansion, the performance, and the version of family loyalty that demanded silence. What we walked toward was not revenge, it was ownership. Our names belonged to us, our choices belonged to us, and whatever remained of our family would have to be built without stealing either one.